My name is Angel, and I'm 25 years old. The phone rang at exactly 6:18 on a Saturday morning. And before I even reached for it, I knew it was my mother. She had a habit of calling whenever she wanted something, never when she simply wanted to hear my voice. I answered. "Hello? Angel," she said without a greeting. "Your grandmother's birthday dinner starts at 7 tonight. Don't be late. I'll be there." There was a brief silence. Then came the sentence I'd heard in one form or another my entire life. "And please, don't embarrass this family." I stared out the apartment window as the morning sun slowly climbed over the city skyline. "What exactly am I supposed to do that would embarrass anyone?" I asked quietly. "You know what I mean," she replied. "Your uncle invited someone very important. General Nathan Carter will be attending with his family. Tonight is about making a good impression. General Nathan Carter." Even I recognized the name, a decorated 4-star general whose leadership had been praised across the country. My mother continued before I could answer. "So keep your opinions to yourself. Don't talk about your work. Just smile, eat dinner, and let your brother have the attention for once." The line went dead. No goodbye. No, I love you. Just another reminder that, in her eyes, I was still the family's greatest disappointment. I placed my phone on the kitchen counter and let out a slow breath. At 25 years old, I had grown used to being underestimated. My relatives believed I had thrown my future away. My father wanted a successful attorney. My mother dreamed of introducing me as a corporate executive. Instead, I chose a path I never explained, not because I was ashamed of it, because the people who had already decided who I was had never shown any interest in hearing the truth. To them, I rented a small apartment. I drove an old car. I rarely attended family gatherings. That was enough evidence to label me a failure. What they didn't know was that my work had taken me to places most people only read about in classified headlines. Places where a single decision could mean the difference between life and death. Places where names weren't important, only results. As I stood in front of my bedroom mirror that evening, adjusting the sleeves of my simple navy blue dress, I looked exactly like the woman my family expected. Quiet, ordinary, forgettable. I smiled at my reflection. If only they knew how wrong they were. The private banquet hall was already buzzing when I arrived. Crystal chandeliers reflected warm golden light across the room, while soft piano music floated through conversations that sounded far more important than they probably were. A hostess smiled politely before leading me toward my family's table. The moment my mother saw me, she walked over with the same practiced smile she always wore in public. "You made it," she whispered. Then, without missing a beat, she straightened the collar of my dress as if I were still a child. "Remember what I told you?" I gave a small nod. "I remember." She looked relieved, not because I was there, but because she believed I would stay invisible. Across the room, my older brother Ethan laughed with our cousins, proudly introducing his recent promotion to anyone willing to listen. When he noticed me, he waved politely. "Hey, Angel. Congratulations on the promotion." "Thanks." For a second, it almost felt normal. Then one of my uncles leaned over and smiled. "So, are you still doing that little government office job?" The table grew unusually quiet. Everyone looked at me. I smiled politely. "Something like that." My uncle chuckled. "I always told your parents you'd eventually figure life out." Several relatives laughed. No one corrected him, not even my parents. I simply picked up my glass of water. Years ago, comments like that would have ruined my evening. Now, they barely reached me. The ballroom doors suddenly opened. The room fell almost silent. General Nathan Carter had arrived. Tall, calm, his silver hair perfectly trimmed. Every step carried the quiet confidence of someone who had spent a lifetime leading others through impossible situations. Beside him walked his wife and daughter. Conversation stopped as guests stood to greet him. Even my father immediately straightened his jacket. The general greeted everyone with a firm handshake and an easy smile before taking his seat at the head table. Dinner began. People shared stories. They laughed. They toasted. I stayed quiet, exactly as my mother had requested. Every few minutes, I noticed something strange. The general kept looking in my direction. Not casually, not by accident, as if he were trying to remember something. Twice our eyes met. Twice he frowned slightly before returning to his conversation. I looked away, assuming I was imagining it. Half an hour later, my uncle stood and tapped his glass. "Ladies and gentlemen, before dessert, I'd like to invite General Carter to say a few words." Applause filled the room. The general rose to his feet. He thanked everyone for the invitation and spoke warmly about family. The entire room listened in complete silence. Then, in the middle of his speech, he suddenly stopped. His eyes moved slowly across the crowd until they landed directly on me. His expression changed instantly. Recognition. He lowered his glass, took one deliberate step away from the podium, and began walking straight toward my table. The smile disappeared from my mother's face. No one in the room understood what was happening. Neither did I. The general stopped only a few feet away, looked directly into my eyes, and quietly said, "Excuse me, have we met before?" The room became so quiet that I could hear the soft clink of silverware against a plate across the hall. Every pair of eyes followed the general. No one expected him to leave the podium in the middle of his speech. Least of all, me. He stopped directly in front of my chair. For a long moment, he simply looked at me. Not with confusion, with certainty, as if he already knew the answer and was waiting to see if I would say it first. I slowly stood. "I'm Angel," I said politely. The general's eyebrows lifted. "Angel Carter?" I gave a small smile and shook my head. "No, sir. Angel Brooks." He nodded slowly. "Of course, Brooks." Then his face brightened with recognition. I knew I couldn't be mistaken. My mother looked completely confused. My father frowned. Ethan glanced between us, searching for an explanation. The general extended his hand. "It is an honor to see you again." I shook it. "The honor is mine, sir." He smiled before turning toward the guests. "I don't believe everyone here knows who this remarkable young woman really is." The room fell silent once again. My stomach tightened. I never liked attention. The general continued. 3 years ago, my special operations team was preparing for one of the most dangerous humanitarian evacuation missions I've ever commanded. He paused. The mission was nearly canceled because our intelligence reports were incomplete. Several guests leaned forward. Then a young intelligence analyst walked into our briefing room. He looked directly at me. "Angel Brooks." My mother blinked. My father slowly lowered his glass. The general continued. "She spent 48 straight hours analyzing satellite data, intercepted communications, and civilian movement." He smiled proudly. "Because of her work, we discovered an ambush waiting exactly where my convoy was scheduled to travel." A wave of whispers spread across the ballroom. If we had followed our original route, he stopped. Many of us would never have returned home. Complete silence. The general's voice became softer. "I have commanded thousands of soldiers during my career, but very few people have ever earned my complete trust." He looked at me again. Angel was one of them. I immediately noticed my mother's face turning pale. She had spent years introducing me as the daughter who never accomplished anything. Now, 200 people were hearing a completely different story. The general reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. "I've carried something with me ever since that mission." He carefully removed a small military challenge coin, its gold edges catching the light from the chandeliers. "I was saving this for the next time our paths crossed." He held it toward me. "This coin is awarded only to those whose courage saves lives without asking for recognition." My hands froze. I never expected to see it again. As I accepted the coin, the general smiled. Then he said something that made the entire room forget how to breathe. "Angel, you weren't the lowest achieving person in this room." He slowly turned toward my family. "You were the one they never deserved to underestimate." For several long seconds, no one spoke. The ballroom, which had been filled with laughter only moments earlier, now felt completely still. My mother looked down at the table, unable to meet anyone's eyes. My father sat frozen, his hands wrapped around a glass he hadn't touched in several minutes. Even my brother Ethan seemed unable to process what he had just heard. The general wasn't angry. He wasn't trying to embarrass anyone. He had simply told the truth. And sometimes the truth carries more weight than any raised voice ever could. He placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Angel never asked for recognition," he said to the room. "In fact, when I offered to recommend her for a national award, she politely declined." A ripple of surprise spread through the guests. "She told me," the general continued, "if the people came home safely, that's enough reward for me." He smiled proudly. "In my career, I've met officers with impressive medals and titles. But character cannot be pinned onto a uniform. Character is revealed when no one is watching." His words settled over the room like a quiet lesson. Then, to my complete surprise, he stepped back and gave me a crisp military salute. Without hesitation, several veterans attending the dinner stood and returned the salute. The room erupted into applause. Not the polite applause from earlier in the evening. This one was genuine. It echoed through the ballroom. I wasn't smiling because people were finally clapping for me. I was smiling because for the first time in years I wasn't hiding who I was. After the applause faded, Ethan walked over. His eyes were red. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "I believed what everyone else believed. I never asked what your life was really like." I gave him a small smile. "It's okay." "No," he replied, shaking his head. "It isn't." He wrapped me in a hug, the first real hug we'd shared in years. "I've never been more proud to call you my sister." When he stepped away, my mother slowly approached. Her confident expression was gone. "I didn't know," she whispered. I looked at her for a moment before answering. "You never asked." Those 3 words were enough. She lowered her eyes. For the first time in my life, there was no excuse, no script, no one left to blame. As I walked toward the exit, the general caught up with me. "Captain," he said with a warm smile. I laughed softly. "I haven't worn that rank in a long time." He nodded. "Maybe not. But people who save lives never stop earning respect." Outside, the cool night air felt different, lighter, peaceful. I realized something as I looked up at the stars. The greatest victory wasn't proving my family wrong. It was finally refusing to let their opinion define who I was. Sometimes the people who call you a failure simply don't know your story. And sometimes it takes a stranger to remind everyone, including you, just how much you're truly worth. The end. And please subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching.